Hello and welcome to In the Channel from channelbuzz.ca, bringing news and information to the Canadian IT channel community for the last 16 years. I'm Robert Dutt, editor at channelbuzz.ca and your host for the show. The question of how to build a security stack for small or mid-sized businesses, or for the MSP serving one, hasn't gotten any simpler. If anything, it's more crowded than ever. Best-of-breed point solutions for every threat vector, each with their own agent, their own dashboard, their own data silo. There is no such thing as a single pane of glass in security. My guest today has a different answer, though. Joe Sykora is Chief Executive Officer at Coro, an 11-year-old cybersecurity platform purpose-built for lean IT environments and the MSPs that serve them. Coro covers 14 security functions from endpoint to email to network, cloud app security, data protection, under a single agent and a single data engine. The company's 100% channel, passed Series D funding, and has made no secret of its ambition to be a platform that consolidates what Joe himself called the Frankenstein stacks that so many MSPs have been managing for years on the security side. What makes him an interesting person to have this conversation with is that he isn't coming at it from the product or the engineering side. He started out running solution provider businesses in the 90s, exited 2 of them, and spent the better part of 15 years in channel leadership roles at Fortinet, Bitdefender, and Proofpoint before taking the CEO chair at Coro last year. Let's get right into it. My chat with Joe Sykora. Joe, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Robert, great to see you.
Most cybersecurity CEOs come up through product, through engineering, through finance. Your background running a solution provider before going vendor side. I'm curious what the industry looks like from a CEO's seat when your formative years were on the partner side of the table.
Sure. Well, it's been an exciting ride, right? It started back in the 90s, and I've been very, very fortunate, right? I was one of the early adopters. The first company I had was an infrastructure company, quickly pivoted to security and a managed security provider in the 90s, which I know I still have a lot of friends that are still out there doing it, but I was one of the early adopters. Very, very fortunate to be able to exit both of those companies and got me to the manufacturer side, right? And I started with a little known company. At the time was unknown, but most people know Fortinet. So I joined them 2010 during their IPO. And man, I like to say the rest is history. And you're right. My role at Fortinet was a little bit different, right? Because I did cover primarily the channel, the partner side, which was, a huge, huge part of Fortinet's success. But I also got to dabble, if I can use the word dabble. I got to dabble on a few other things as operations, the marketing piece. In fact, when we made some of those acquisitions, I got to be the interim CEO as we integrated those in. So I never lost my entrepreneurial spirit, right? Which I'm the type of person where if there's a problem, I like to fix it. I don't like to just say, that's the way it's always been, we're going to do it. I always challenge things no matter where I go. And with the same attitude as well, where, whatever you need me to do, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and get a crack at it, right? I think I had one interview a long time ago, right? When I was first starting my career on the manufacturer side, and they're like, what do you do? What do you cover? And there was a long list of things. And I was like, listen, and if the garbage needs to be taken out, I'll take out the garbage too, right? Because that's the way I was brought up. Right. Very, very humble beginnings in Ohio. We were talking a little bit before we started this in Ohio. I grew up in a farm country, believe it or not. So I was one of the first, going way back in 4th grade, I was the first, some of the first children that got to play around with Mac and programming on Mac. So at a very early age, I got a little bit addicted to programming and computers and everything else. So it's kind of wild. But the seat right now from CEO seat, that's what I've been kind of brewing myself for throughout my career. I've led go-to-market strategies. Like I said, I've been involved very much on the back end. Always a great relationship with the financial side of the companies that I've been at. So when this opportunity came up, it was something that I felt in my career. One, I was ready, right? Because I've put on a lot of international experience. If you look back at the last 10 years or so, I've been in markets all over the world, meeting with people and partners and really listening to the different needs that they have. But more importantly, I love the channel, right? I came from the channel. So for me to be able to run 100% channel motion is very, very unique. So when you look at different solutions and different opportunities out there, Coro was one of those, right? It makes perfect sense. And that's why, one of the first things I did as CEO is kind of kill the direct motion, right? We had a mixed model and it didn't make sense for us. But yeah, so it's exciting. Of course, there's other challenges, right? I spent a lot of my time with boards and financial institutions, and which is great. And then sometimes I even get in the road. So I was at a conference last week. I got to speak, and I love getting in front of the partners and talking about kind of our story, how we're different. And then sometimes it even leads to, giving advice on how to exit companies and what's important and things like that.
No doubt a topic of interest for
Yeah.
the MSPs.
Probably a lot of people listening out there. That's always a key thing is, how do I exit? How do I exit?
Yep. For you guys, the platform consolidation pitch is a big one, and it's a compelling one on paper. One agent, one dashboard, 14 modules. But there's always, I'm sure, that MSP who comes up and says, "All right, the jack of all trades, master of none thing." How do you answer an MSP who says, I see your point, but my EDR vendor or my email security specialist is doing better in that particular lane than what Coro can do? What's kind of the message to that skeptic?
Yeah, well, I think things have definitely changed, right? And again, this is coming from a guy who's been in cyber now for almost 30 years. I've been part of large organizations. I've been part of, SMB focused, enterprise focused, carrier focused, everything in between. I've been fortunate to work for multi-billion-dollar companies. So you get to see it all, right? And you get to see a lot of different partners. And for the partners out there, listen, everyone has their tech stack, right? This isn't anything new. We've had and built, even when I was an MSP, right? My pitch was, you can't afford an enterprise platform, not only the licensing, but really managing the platform, right? You don't have the expertise, so let me come in and do that. I'm sure a lot of people out there today are doing the same thing. Coro is different, right? And because of the advancements of using AI, and I know that's a topic that I think last week I said we should make a drinking game out of AI anytime anyone says AI. But, AI is moving faster than anything we've seen out there, right? Forget Moore's Law, because, that thing it's still following it, but at a pace that's unbelievable. And even if you look back 6 months where we were, I know I do, and I'm like, holy cow, where will I be in 3 months, right? Because it's moving so quickly. Coro's not a new company, right? Coro's 11 years old. Coro was purpose-built for the MSP and SMB or lean IT, I like to more refer to it, people with limited resources, right? Now that's the same end user that our MSP friends out there are looking for as well. So they've been providing solutions. What we do is help operationalize things. And Coro is not about, let's look at each individual module and say, I have it, I don't have it. They shouldn't have a gap, but the ability to put it all in one agent, no agent sprawl, makes things simpler. Putting it all in one data set, because it is all our IP, that's what we spend the last years developing. There's something important there, right? Because if you're going to use AI to help you, right, and assist your SOC analysts, and what do you really want? You want results, right? Your customers want results. You want results quickly. That's where having clean data going into it is so important. And that's why we're seeing, on average, about a 92, 93% automation of, correlating and then remediating automatically. That's pretty good, right? And it's getting better. Like a year ago when I came here to Coro, we were in the high 80s, 80, 88, 89%. We're now closing in on the mid 90s. I was talking to a partner the other day. They're actually seeing about 96%. So what that translates to is operational efficiencies. And I know all of us out there probably looked at OML models and everything else that have been around for a long time. That is time back, and that is money to you as an MSP, right? So we know a couple different things. We know that the attacks aren't slowing down. In fact, we're seeing about a a 3x increase of attacks already this year. And how I look at that is the tickets that we're opening and closing compared to last year and the year before, it is definitely increased because the bad guys are also using AI to try to get anything. And the stuff looks good, right? I don't know about you, but there's still some stuff that I see that comes through. I was like, wow, that looks pretty legit. So for all of my partners out there, it's more around the outcomes and the cost savings around operationalizing the back end for efficiencies. Listen, if we want to go head to head with your endpoint and EDR vendor, we can. We still test out 5 nines. The difference is it's simpler, right? In the simplicity, there is a place. I've talked to many of what I consider enterprise MSPs who are either focused at enterprise or, they're very proud of their stack, and that's fine. Then they look at someone like Coro, we're 100% channel, guaranteed margins, a lot of support, and then all of a sudden that makes sense on the upfront side. But then when they get it in, the operational efficiencies of being able to now work on, instead of say 20 or 30 clients at a time, your analyst can look at 100 or more. That's real money, right? And that's where the aha moment is with a lot of the MSP owners is, hey, this makes a lot of sense. And sometimes seeing is believing. They have to test it out, but knowing that we actually have a very quick deployment, it's a simple deployment, and then it just works. We did introduce Coro AI within the product. We've always used AI in the correlation, but we introduced Coro AI in the product for all of our MSPs who want to look at reporting across all their customers, analyzing. Now, we're not an NDR, but we give you MDR results, right? Like if you want to do some threat hunting and see what's going on, you just talk to our AI. We try to make it as simple as possible. So yeah, it's, if you rewind back to the value prop that we had back when I started at Fortinet, which was putting a lot of different cybersecurity technologies on a single firewall, call it next generation firewall, call it unified threat management. The concept is the same, except now I have more modules and I'm in the cloud, and you can do more modern things with what we do here at Coro. So, and we can coexist, right? If you do have a solution in place, that's okay. We can coexist. It is a very lightweight client that can coexist with everything. And then you have the choice. You're getting the results, you're getting the operational efficiencies. Then when it comes up for renewal time, then you can make a decision to say, do I need to renew that enterprise point product that I have or not, right? It could be another cost savings, but the true value of Coro is on the operational side and getting results. That is true. Because if you don't have something, you're going to be in trouble, right? You really, really are.
And that 92% automated alerts figure, that has to be one, especially when you're talking to partners, and it sounds like in some cases they're seeing above that. That's got to be one that gets a lot of attention, given where MSPs sit and what they do and how they optimize their operations. Can you walk me through what that automation means for an MSP day to day? And maybe more interestingly, what does the other 8% look like? Is that still where sort of are those the points where human judgment still matters most?
Well, listen, we'll cover both those questions. Let's start with the human piece. There's no way I'm going to get to 100%. Everyone knows that, right? Now, will it increase? And do I have certain partners already seeing it? Yes, of course. Just like anything, the more AI sees, the more it tunes, the better it gets, the more inputs you have. Now, I would say the difference that we have is, since it is all one database, that is the difference of why it's so effective, because most of you out there are probably doing API integrations. You still don't have a true single pane of glass, even by some of my friends that are providing things at some of the big companies, right, you're running your business on, some of the platforms, the PSA tools and whatnot. They've kind of, I don't want to say Frankenstein things together, but there's a lot of APIs and different manufacturers through acquisitions. I had a very elegant solution, right? So back to the 8% that you need to look at, it's because we can't make a judgment call at that point. Now, we're doing things to improve it, right? And again, it's every vector of the threat spectrum that we have, and that's why all of our modules are important. The more you use, the better it gets, right? So even if you already have another solution in place, that's why I say we're lightweight. Let us be defense in depth, right? It's okay. Let us see that data because that's how you get better results as well. It's been interesting because things have been moving so quickly, right? I think, when I came here, I've always believed in the technology that we've been putting out. What we needed to do as a company, though, is to make it a little more consumable. And where, Gartner, whether you embrace it, look at it, read it, Gartner kind of puts this new category of workspace protection, right? It's a term that they came out with last year. Coro was mentioned, of course, in a few articles that they did on that. Our direct connections into Microsoft and Google Workspaces is key, right? Because then we can start doing some of the compliance, the DLP. A lot of you are probably starting to get questions about how, AI is cool. How do I protect that my confidential information isn't going in? And then, once it's in, it's out there. So, being able to do some of these complex tools with our agent and with our platform, same thing mobile wise, right? A lot of people are like, how do I truly stop smishing, right? And, you're going to have a mobile client that kind of is another vector into it, because carrier independent gets a little bit challenging, and we've got a way to do that. So, yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, I've been in this for a while, and we talk a lot around the same basics, but you're always going to need that human level. And I'm sure most of the partners out there are already automating it with, some type of, MDR solution or SEM solution, XDR. The problem with those solutions is, one, they are typically expensive, but they're very complex, right? And, our job in security is not only stopping the bad stuff, but it's the false positives. And I think anyone out there that's spent a lot of time on false positives, that's sometimes even more important, because if you're spending a lot of time on that, and that's the other thing I'm proud of, our false positives of a very low rate as well. So
one of the latest things you guys have launched is getting an MCP server out there. Can you explain what that actually does in practical terms, in terms of how the workflow changes for an MSP when the security data is feeding directly into an AI agent?
Yeah, and depending who you talk to, it could be, I'm not saying controversial, but I was at RSA, right, in the big talk, and I think this is something we've been talking about for a while. Is it cybersecurity with AI protection, or is it AI with cyber, right? And that is the question. And what we're starting to see is more partners build things around AI platforms. So we wanted to give them the flexibility to, if they choose, right, and it's not out of the box, you still have to do some work with it, but, just being a little more friendly, if you will, as far as if that's the route that you're choosing. Some of these new startup, either providers, partners, and they're looking at the platforms and they're like, hey, doesn't it make a lot of sense for me to build on that versus some of the other tools that are out there? So we wanted to give them the flexibility to do that. On the technical side, I'm still working with our engineers on some of the stuff we're doing is really cool, right? Now, on the manufacturer side, though, we do need to be very careful, because then, if you look at the experience, right? And this was a first step for us, because the other vision of Coro is, this is all about operational efficiencies and consuming our tech where you want to, which means if you don't want to interface with my UI, and I know this is, some of us that have been in this for a while, you're like, wait, what? You don't have to. Meaning that this is also back to the things that I can't automate. If I can communicate with our system, right, our platform, where you want to do it, whether it be in some type of AI platform, maybe it's Slack, maybe it's, you want a Slack experience, and that's how you answer the things that we need to resolve, and you don't go into my UI. Maybe it's Teams, maybe it's text. So you can start to think and unlock, if Coro can be where you want it to be in your business, and I can provide you more efficiencies. That's the vision, right? And I'm not saying it's a unique vision. I think a lot of people are talking about it. We're pretty nimble, right? And we have a lot of developers. We're, at the core of Coro, we're a development house, right? That is by far by none. Yes, we have some excellent people on the channel sales side that support you, especially around the engineering and the architects. But we're not, we're mostly developers. We're not out there. I'm not hiring just teams and teams and teams of salespeople to say, here we go, because I think our partners should do that. I also think partners should provide all the services, right? And be protected to do all the services. Some manufacturers, they get this, they're tempted on, should I do direct to end user type services and or sales? And you see some of them. I don't have any desire to do that, right? It helps me focus on being good at developing the products. And that's what we're going to do.
Let's talk a little bit about vendor concentration risk. I mean, the great thing for an MSP is there's 14 security functions under one roof. Also, the potential challenge for an MSP is there's 14 security functions under one roof. What's the answer to a partner who asks, what happens to my clients if something goes sideways, whether that's something more ephemeral, a bad update or an outage, or something longer term, an acquisition, for example?
Yeah, of course. Well, we all make business decisions, right? And we're all business owners out there. I think that everyone on the manufacturer side is taking this. It used to be, right, best of breed, and you did best of breed. Now, of course, I think anyone you talk to on the manufacturer says platform, platform, platform. The more we can put on a single data set, because that is the way you can, the cleaner the data into an AI model, the better. All of my 14 modules, are they the best out there? You could challenge me in a few. I think the core products that we have are very, very good. They test out 5 nines. They're just as good as others. Do I have all the enterprise features of some of the other things? If we look at like our network module, right? Or something like that, you may want more, but we'll interface in with that. We're built for lean IT, right? Which I believe that most of the MSPs out there are also somewhat lean, and that gives them back to more cycles. If you look at like an end user who has used Coro over the years, they don't have all the IT resources in the world, and they don't have the expertise to do that. And it's a perfect play for MSPs. Now, there's always the big question of, will they get acquired? Will something happen? This is pretty cool. It's too good to believe. And trying it, seeing is believing, and trying is believing. That's not our plan. We have, if you look at Coro, we're late stage, right? We're past Series D. It's a very solid company. And, I was brought in to become the biggest, fattest cybersecurity company out there. It was not a come in and, let's get acquired, or come in and let's IPO, which, you never know. And those are different conversations. And I think for partners, you do, right? You need to make the business decisions. But I will say, if you look at our model and look at our cost of what we charge, because we do have good, better, best. It's not, you don't have to take all the modules. We have three different bundles. What makes sense with you, right? And as long as you're running 3 of the technologies or more, cost-wise, it makes perfect sense. And then you're getting all the benefits. But like I said, if you choose to have, maybe you want a little bit more granularity around a SASE solution, that's fine, right? It's something that you can integrate, and we can still look and manage it. So, but you're right. It is a business decision, and something you have to evaluate as a business owner.
You guys opened a Canadian data center a couple of years ago. I'm curious what your read is on the Canadian MSP market. How different is it in nature from what you see in the States? And especially, what does the regulatory conversation look like for your Canadian partners?
Yeah, so we're partnered, and I think it's public, so we can talk about it. We're partnered with Amazon, right? So we are, we have a portable, we use the public clouds, and of course, our partnership with Amazon is important. we have had the Canadian presence, right, in for many, many years. Listen, there are a lot of regulatory things that we need to comply with for Canada. If I didn't believe in the Canadian MSP market, I don't think we'd have a server in Canada. So, and local presence. So I think it's very important. In the past, I've actually, and I haven't been a lot of manufacturers, but in the near past, I was having to fight that and justify it. I was like, listen, if we want to do business with MSPs in Canada, we have to support localization. We have to make sure we comply with all that. And Coro's set up for that. So it's an investment we'll make. We also have dedicated people in Canada, actual Canadians that are helping, our partners with whatever they need help with. So I may, as far as what I think it's a great market, right? I think it's a fantastic market. I think Coro is a good fit. Localization of whatever we need to do within the market is also something we support. If you look in the DLP side, right, there are differences between US data and Canadian data, and we fully support them, right? We made that investment. Now, your question on what difference do I see between the MSPs, between the two? I get the privilege to deal with MSPs across the world. Mm-hmm. And there are some things that are consistent, the operationalizing and giving predictability to business owners is key, right? And those are two principles that we have built into our program. The other thing too is ease of consumption, because I'm a firm believer that you should be able to consume us however you want, whether that be, if you want to do 100% consumption model, fine, right? I'm not here to lock people into long contracts and into things that they don't want or need. I have those, right? And of course, those are higher discount levels and everything else. But, that was the other thing I came in was I worked with finance to build a true consumption model where you have the keys to the kingdom, right? We have brand, parent, child. So if you want 3 tiers, we'll give you 3 tiers. You get to pick, right? You can activate at will, and it's a simple bill in arrears where you only have to pay for what you consume, right? And what you use. It is complete flexibility. So, one of the things I've been able to do through the years is look back and say, what do partners want? And I have advisory councils too, of course, right? It's a constant feedback loop. On the technology side, what do you need? What are you seeing? And here's what we have. And then also, I think it's important on the program side to be very transparent. I know that to do business in Canada, we had to make the investments we've made. We've made those investments, and we'll continue to make investments, right? And the people, the technologies, and it's an open forum where we do love that feedback loop. People who know me know that I really take seriously the feedback from partners, and a lot of things we had. In fact, last year we had our first advisory council. We did it F1 last year, and the feedback that we got from the partners has been implemented and actually deployed, right? That was last year. And in the January release, we had a lot of updates because of what our MSP partners kind of asked for, advised us, and said it can include integrations too, integrating to different platforms. So we're here to listen, right? We're here to listen and make sure that we're exactly what the partners want. And each partner is different. So, sometimes we'll get these one-off things that are very, very specific to one partner. And we'll work with them for some, okay, well, how can we tackle this challenge type thing? But, doing a separate code base for just one partner, that doesn't make sense. But I think most of what we have is pretty flexible.
You've said that 2025 was a foundational year for Coro and that 2026 is about execution. What does that execution mean? What are the 1 or 2 things that you think you've got to get right this year specifically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I get to put my CEO hat back on now. So listen, it's not a bad thing. We had so much opportunity, right? We had all these opportunities across the entire world. You have to have some focus, right? Because if not, you get spread too thin and everything else. So, you do kind of have to say, okay, here are our core things that we're going to do. I had a challenge too, because I needed to switch out some back-end systems. Nothing to do with the product, how we ran the business, right? The automations, it's more of the customer and partner experience than anything else. So this year, right, we fixed that last year. We brought a lot of new people in. So a lot of familiar faces to the partners out there. People who have been in cyber sales and channel sales for many, many years, some of as long as I have. That was important to get the right people, right? So you do the foundational work, you make sure the systems. This year is about executing on a very focused plan. But more importantly, we're also stress testing all the work we did, right? Because as a business leader, you need to make sure that something's not going to break, right? Because 2027 is all about scale, right? And you need to make sure that you pressure test that. And again, we introduced a new MSP program not so long ago. We're testing that right now. It's a very simple program. It's one I've used in the past, but hey, maybe things have changed a little bit and we need a little bit of tweaks. So that's what this is about, right? This year is about the execution. Now, we're still growing at a very good rate, right? I mean, most people, if you're running a business, you'd be happy with it. My team is like, hey, how can we do more? But the scale piece, right? It's so important when we move to that next year that we're ready, right? And be able to say all the great things that we're doing today, you can't have the machine break. You can almost take it to the point of breaking, but you don't want it to break. And that's part of the putting a little bit of the blinders on and not doing, distraction things. I mean, I'll give you an example, Robert. When I took over as CEO, one of the things is we had a project that was a consumer app. And I was like, whoa, time out. Because I've been in a mixed environment before when I was running things over at Bitdefender. And it is again, it's a different type of support, right? It's a different type of service. It's a lot of differences that, if you're a company, you just can't one day wake up and say, hey, I want to build a consumer app and let's launch it. So things like that. That's a really good example to say, okay, let's take that and pause and or evaluate where, I just want to focus on the primary platform. We are looking at, are there some features out there that we need to incorporate? And, but feedback right now is very, very comprehensive. Like you said, we have more areas covered than anyone else to my knowledge, right? And I've been around the block a little bit, so I've done some research.
Last question for me. MSPs are being pulled in a dozen directions. Always seems to be the case, and certainly true now. If you could give one piece of concrete advice on how MSPs should be thinking about their security stack over the balance of the year, the next 12 to 18 months, what would that be?
Yeah, automation, right? You need to be prepared. We've seen, like I said, it's 3-4x the number of attacks already this year compared to last year, right? So we're at a pace where if you don't think it's going to happen to you, you're wrong, right? And I don't think anyone out there is. And that's why it's so important to make sure whatever you're doing is efficient and effective, right? We all know we need to be effective, but if you have to, if you need to look at adding a bunch of people or more tech or those are things that you can't change your price model, right? I mean, your price to the customer, if anything, they want it to go down. They don't want it to go up. So you need to deliver first-class effective services. And that's why you need to always be evaluating, okay, what else is out there? What's kind of new? The other thing too is you don't want to just go with a new company that's just opened up and everything else. You want to make sure you're with someone that has put the work in, many revisions, done the work, and it's a platform that's been tested up and running for a long time. So, we can go on and on about business things because I have advised a lot of people on my free advising on what it looks like, because it's a very interesting market out there with, consolidation is real. I think we've all seen that in the last few years, a lot of consolidation. And, when you look at consolidation, there's all this consolidation of tech stacks and tools and how do I do it? And it all comes back to how do I do more with less, with still providing a par or better type outcome for my clients. So that's buckle up, right? Because the next, I'm looking at the next 3 months going, okay, where are we going to be with some of these new things that are even coming out right now, right? So
Never a dull moment in this industry, that's for sure.
never, Robert, never a dull moment.
Joe, I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you. You take care. Thanks, Robert.
There you have it, Joe Sykora from Coro. I'd like to thank Joe for his time. Good conversation. If you're an MSP evaluating your security stack, there are a few things worth thinking about here. The core of Coro's argument, pardon the pun, isn't really about individual module quality, and to Joe's credit, he acknowledged on the record that not every one of those 14 modules is, in and of itself, best in class. The argument is about what happens when all of them share a single data engine. The 92 to 93% automated alert remediation rate, with some partners seeing 96, is the claimed payoff of that architecture. And he's right that in an environment where attacks are up 3 to 4 times year over year, and you simply cannot raise prices on clients, the only lever MSPs really have left is efficiency. Not a new observation, but it really lands well when the guy saying it used to run solution providers himself. Another thing we're thinking about is the question Joe raised from RSA. Is it cybersecurity with AI protection, or is it AI with cyber? Not just philosophical, it has real implications for how MSPs think about building their service delivery around AI platforms going forward. And it's a conversation we're going to have a lot more of on this show, I'll bet. If you found this useful, please follow or subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all the major directories. Ratings and reviews, always appreciated and always noticed. Till next time, I'm Robert Dutt for channelbuzz.ca, and I'll see you in the channel.